There were exactly 9,248 classified species housed inside the Galactic Zoo on Ivrix Prime. Every one of them catalogued, monitored, and tranquilized if they so much as twitched the wrong way. But the one creature that caused the most laughter, at least until the incident, was listed as Exhibit 9310B. Terran Companion Class 2. The handlers called it Muffin. At barely 2 feet tall, bipedal, and covered in what the Galari species referred to as fuzz filaments, Muffin was the first Terran mammal to be introduced into the zoo under the non-dangerous category. It had oversized eyes, 4 small digits on each paw, and a habit of sneezing when nervous. Children of all species loved it. Muffin barked, chased synthetic orbs, and tilted its head adorably when presented with any problem. In a place where beasts the size of freighters were caged behind energy fields and even mid-tier predators required antimatter sedation, Muffin was a plush novelty. A joke. Some said it had been brought aboard as a peace gesture from the collapsing Terran Confederacy. Others believed it wandered into a scout ship and was too cute to vaporize. Either way, Muffin's pen was located in the gift shop corridor, right next to the holographic souvenir booth. "Can it do any tricks?" younglings often asked, pressing their tentacles or feathered limbs to the display glass. "Yes," said Handler Quib, a Slarnian with 6 eyes and a coffee addiction. "Watch. Muffin, roll over!" Muffin yawned, scratched its belly, and then farted. Laughter. Applause. Then another sneeze. The creature was harmless. That's what everyone thought, until the beast class escape of Cycle 6. It began with a shudder in the eastern quadrant, barely registered as a tremor on the structural monitors. Quib, as usual, was late with his reports, sipping amber brew in the control station while casually scanning headlines. He didn't even glance at the blinking red indicator until it beeped 3 times. Zone 12B, containment breach. No, he muttered. That can't be right. Zone 12B was where Exhibit 001A was kept. Crorthan the Unbound. A quadrupedal monstrosity from the death moons of SYRR, Crorthan was one of only 5 known survivors of its species. 10 tons of scaled muscle, 4 maws with rotating incisors, and a cognitive rating just low enough to prevent psychic classification. It ate through plasma shielding. When tranquilized, it howled in frequencies that caused retinal hemorrhaging. And now it was out. Quib shot upright, spilling his cup on the console. Emergency lights snapped on. All exits sealed with a mechanical growl. "Containment breach confirmed," said the central AI in a detached tone. "Beast class entity at large. All personnel evacuate to Level C safe zone. Repeat, Beast class." I get it," Quib yelled, smacking the comms panel. "How did this happen?" But the AI wasn't listening. It had already triggered autolocks on every non-essential system, rerouted energy to defensive corridors, and deployed the drone tranquilizers, all of which would likely bounce off Crorthan's armor-plated hide like rubber toys. Quib's mandibles twitched. "I'm too underpaid for this." Meanwhile, in Corridor J22, the same corridor that housed Exhibit 9310B, Muffin was sitting in its pen, calmly chewing on a squeaky replica of the Galactic Senate building. The first vibrations hadn't fazed it. The sirens didn't either. But when the ground shook a second time, and a roar echoed down the passage, it froze. A shadow rippled across the far end of the hallway. Visitors were screaming. One Lekari child dropped her treat cube and bolted. Drones buzzed uselessly past, already sparking from damage. Crorthan came into view like a moving mountain, scaled and steaming, blood-red eyes locked forward. The escape wasn't a dash for freedom. It was a hunt. And the next sector was Muffin's. Inside the pen, the human pet blinked. It tilted its head, ears perked. The squeaky Senate rolled away. Then it stood up. Muffin's demeanor changed subtly. Its legs widened. The innocent gaze faded. It stepped toward the transparent energy barrier and pressed a paw against it. The security field blinked, then flickered out entirely. Power rerouted to core defenses. Crorthan snarled, lowering its forward haunches to pounce. Muffin walked out of the pen. On the upper level, Quib had pulled emergency footage on the hallways. He expected carnage. Screams. At worst, an empty feed with a trail of bodies. Instead, he watched in confusion as the tiny Terran stepped calmly into the center of the hall, right into Crorthan's path. "No, what is it doing?" Quib croaked. "Get it out of there!" But no one answered. The AI was rerouting drones. Other handlers were hiding or locked in panic rooms. The creature that had rolled over and farted on command was now standing its ground. And in front of it, a Category 1 apex predator charged. Quib covered two of his eyes with his upper limbs. "Please don't eat the pet. It'll be a PR nightmare." But Muffin didn't run. It didn't bark. It didn't even blink. When Crorthan lunged, its claws tearing through the deck plating, Muffin moved. What the surveillance footage caught next became the most downloaded clip on the intergalactic net for 5 cycles straight. With a twist that blurred in the feed, Muffin rolled beneath Crorthan's front arm, pivoted on its hind legs, and launched itself upwards, straight into the beast's lower jaw. There was a sickening crunch, followed by a squeal that registered off the charts in frequency. Crorthan reeled. The zoo's main corridor floor cracked from the force of the beast's stagger. Quib leaned in, eyes wide. "What in the name of Thalas' third moon?" Muffin had landed silently. Not a hair out of place. But now, it bared teeth, rows of them. Far too many for a creature its size. Its eyes glowed faintly blue. Crorthan tried again, swiping with a tail that could level buildings. Muffin dodged, ducked, and struck again, this time at a nerve cluster beneath the beast's shoulder plate. A precise strike. The beast buckled. It wasn't a fight. It was a dismantling. Quib's panel pinged. The AI had just tagged 9310B as pending reclassification. Species status unknown. Threat level evaluating. By the time the response team arrived, geared with mech suits and Class 9 deterrents, Crorthan was unconscious, twitching, and covered in bite marks that seemed surgical. The floor was littered with broken tiles and scorched electronics. And in the center of it all sat Muffin, licking its paws. When Quib arrived 20 minutes later, his hands were still shaking. It turned and sneezed at him. "Hello, Muffin," he said, his voice an octave too high. You okay, little buddy?" Muffin looked up, tail wagging slightly. Then yawned. Quib glanced at the wreckage, then at the reclassification note blinking in his HUD. "What are you?" he whispered. Muffin sneezed again, and sat down. Above them, the zoo intercom blared to life again. "Attention all personnel, Exhibit 9310B is now under special containment. All visitors are advised to refrain from interacting with Terran specimens until further notice." The news would spread by the next galactic rotation. But Quib already knew. Whatever Muffin was, it wasn't just a pet. It was waiting. The official statement released by the Galactic Zoo's Central Council described the incident as a containment malfunction followed by an unanticipated interspecies defensive interaction. But everyone across the Orion Spur called it what it was. The day the pet took down a monster. By the second rotation after the event, Muffin had gone viral. Merch booths sold out of Terran companion plushies overnight. Holovids reenacting the takedown played on loop at every interstellar port. Even the xenobiology forums, normally reserved for dry debates about pheromone matrices, were flooded with theories. Some said Muffin was a bioengineered weapon. Others insisted it was an ancient guardian race hiding in plain sight. A few wild threads declared Muffin was a miniature deity. And through all the chaos, the creature itself sat quietly in its new enclosure, triple reinforced, zero visibility from outside, with 4 tranquilizer drones hovering 24/7. But Muffin didn't care. It napped on its cushioned bed, licked the window occasionally, and stared curiously at the guards through the reinforced viewports. Quib, now temporarily promoted to Terran Specialist Liaison, had the unenviable job of figuring out exactly what Muffin was. The AI had already scrubbed all previous classifications. Query: Species 9310B. Result: No match in known databases. Genetic markers display Terran mammalian structure with significant deviation. Neural density exceeds galactic apex norms by 240%. Quib sipped his fourth amber brew of the cycle and groaned. They gave me a desk job, he muttered, staring at the live feed of Muffin chewing on what looked like the remains of a military-grade chew toy. I stopped one beast class from escaping and now I'm babysitting another one that looks like a chew toy. Ironic. What made it worse was that Muffin had begun watching him. Not just the camera. It watched him. Every time he passed through the hall outside its enclosure, the creature's ears would perk up. Its eyes would track him. The moment he looked in through the triple-shielded viewport, there it was. Waiting. Like it knew something. Like it remembered. Like it was bored. The boredom didn't last. 3 days after the incident, while Muffin was asleep, curled up like a harmless ball of fluff, the sirens screamed again. But this time, it wasn't a malfunction. It wasn't Crorthan. It wasn't even a contained beast. It was a break-in. Sector 9A, Transport Dock 4. An unauthorized ship had bypassed the outer perimeter shields and crashed directly into the bay. Records showed it had broadcast an ancient, obsolete Galari diplomatic frequency, long enough to slip through the firewall undetected. By the time security arrived, half the bay crew had been knocked unconscious. The intruders weren't beasts. They were pirates. Organized. Armed. And wearing stolen security armor. Their goal wasn't mayhem. It was acquisition. And they weren't after jewels, credits, or black market sedatives. They wanted Exhibit 9310B. Quib stared in disbelief as the footage streamed in. Why would anyone try to steal Muffin? But the more he thought about it, the more it made sense. The clip of Muffin versus Crorthan had hit billions of views across over 200 inhabited systems. A creature that small, that cute, with that kind of destructive ability? To a warlord? A collector? A weapons dealer? It wasn't a pet. It was a goldmine. Security scrambled to intercept the infiltrators, but they moved fast, almost like they had a map. Almost like someone had sold them an inside layout. Quib's heart dropped. They knew the cage protocols. It took them less than 5 minutes to reach the Terran sector. Inside the enclosure, Muffin blinked awake. Its nose twitched. Then it stood, calmly, and padded over to the viewport, where it watched the chaos unfold with unnerving stillness. The pirates carried suppressor tech, miniature EMP pucks that knocked out the drones with electromagnetic pulses. The lasers guarding Muffin's cage shorted out in a burst of sparks. 2 pirates stepped forward with stasis collars and containment foam sprayers. You sure this thing's the one? One muttered. The leader, a bald Yanthri with a scarred snout and a heavy rail launcher, sneered. You saw the vids? It took down a Crorthan. Cute thing's worth more than a carrier ship. Still doesn't look like much. Don't get cocky. The boss said sedate it first, then tag it for exfil. Muffin stood in the middle of the cage, tail swaying gently. The Yanthri fired the first stasis net. It never reached its target. The moment it left the barrel, Muffin moved, not in a straight line, not like a predator, but like liquid. 1 second it was standing. The next it blurred left, climbed the wall, bounced off the light fixture, and landed on the pirate's shoulder. The man barely had time to scream before Muffin drove a claw, no longer cute, no longer stubby, deep into the base of his neck. He dropped. The second pirate raised his weapon, but it jammed, Muffin already at his feet, slashing through his armor like it was paper. The third turned to run but didn't even make it out of the cage before being tackled midair. In less than 8 seconds, all 3 were down. Alive, but paralyzed. A toxin, maybe? Something precise. Measured. Quib saw it all on the feed. This time, Muffin didn't return to his bed. It walked toward the camera, looked directly at the lens, and sat down. Like it was done. Like it had just cleaned its house. The rest of the pirate crew, unaware of what happened to their forward team, continued deeper into the zoo. They found their comms dead. Their equipment scrambled. and their path forward blocked by security bots suddenly, too effective. By the time reinforcements arrived from Iverick's security command, the intruders were unconscious, cuffed, or in medical stasis. Not by the zoo. By Muffin. Quibb stared at the report. There's no way that's possible. It's just a companion class, right? Just a pet. But then came the final message. The one he hadn't expected. Encrypted. Off record. Unauthorized. Origin, Deep Orbit Interceptor Vessel, TC-0045 Legacy. Sender, Lieutenant Ava Miles, Terran Confederacy, retired. To whom it may concern at the Galactic Zoo. You are in possession of a Tier Black Terran specimen classified as Guardian Class. Code name, Omega Cub. Originally deployed as part of Project Haven during the final years of the Terran collapse. Designed to infiltrate enemy biomes, assess threats, and eliminate apex predators using low-profile behavior and adaptive combat protocols. If it bonded to you, congratulations. You're still alive. Do not attempt to move it. Do not attempt to sedate it. And for the love of all binary systems, do not try to monetize it. It doesn't like that. It was trained to be cute. It was built to end wars. Quibb sat in silence. Outside, through the viewport, Muffin stood at the center of its cage, now humming slightly, its eyes half closed, but never unaware. Then it barked. Just once. The sound echoed through the control deck like thunder. And all across the zoo, the lights flickered. Later that cycle, during the debrief with Central Command, Quibb was asked what kind of threat level he'd assigned to 9310B. He thought for a moment. Then replied softly. Whatever's above Beast Class. They updated the tags. The guards doubled. But it didn't matter. Muffin already knew every hallway. Every override code. Every guard rotation. It had let itself be contained. And now, it was watching. Waiting. Because something else was coming. Something worse. And Muffin, Omega Cub, wasn't just awake. It was on alert. The sky over Iverick's Prime cracked open without warning. At first, it was just a tremor in the subspace lattice, an irregular fluctuation dismissed as a sensor ghost. Then came the screams from orbital traffic control. Static bursts. Power blackouts. The northern sky shifted from a pale violet to a deep, burning red. The stars blinked out, one by one. Above the Galactic Zoo, a shape descended. It didn't roar. It didn't glow. It simply was. A mass of black geometry and inverted light, larger than any ship the system had ever registered. Triangular. Silent. Wrong. Unidentified vessel has breached orbital perimeter, announced the guy, its voice for once losing its calm cadence. Shield erased unresponsive. External signal jamming detected. Scanning for registry, no match. This entity does not conform to known galactic physics. Quibb didn't even reach for his coffee. He just stared at the display. A single word flashed on screen, classified level Omega Black. Null form. He had heard the term before. Whispered in war libraries. Scribbled in redacted Terran field notes. A species, or maybe a phenomenon, that was never fully proven. Descriptions varied, but all versions shared a single terrifying feature. Wherever a null form went, biological complexity unraveled. Planets turned sterile. Systems went dark. Minds stopped. Now one was descending toward them. Sirens howled across the zoo as planetary defenses, some dating back to the First Galactic War, spun to life. Rail batteries, quantum torpedoes, even a backup tachyon disruptor buried beneath the western ridge. All fired. All failed. The null form didn't deflect. Didn't resist. The weapons simply disappeared mid-flight. On the security deck, handlers froze. Military advisors issued orders, only for their voices to vanish from comms. Cameras shut off in waves. Artificial gravity flickered. And still, the null form sank lower. Like a god reaching down. Then, without sound, it landed. Or rather, appeared. Sector 13X, a long abandoned biocontainment field behind the genetics lab, lit up with anti-life distortion. Sensors blinked and burst. Drones fell dead from the air. Even hardened security bots stopped moving, their firmware corroded by proximity. A hole opened in the air itself. No hatch. No glow. Just emptiness folding into the world. From that wound, something emerged. It walked upright. At first glance, vaguely humanoid, but stretching and reshaping as it moved. Its limbs shimmered between lengths. Eyes? No. Just pits. Its presence pulled at the mind, like looking into a math problem that hated being solved. It had a name. Not one spoken aloud, but encoded in ancient Terran war logs. Quib had read them once on a dare. The Unmaker. And now it was here. Quib fumbled to open the emergency override. I need the Terran file. Muffin! The creature in 9310B. Access denied, the AI said coldly. System integrity compromised. Manual release only. The only place left untouched by the disruption was Muffin's enclosure. Inside, the Omega Cub stood perfectly still, eyes reflecting red from distant emergency lights. Its tail no longer wagged. Its ears were rigid. It had known. From the moment of the pirate raid. From the first tremor in the orbital shield. Muffin had known. And now, its moment had come. The final protocol. It walked to the far wall of its enclosure and placed one paw against the metal. A symbol, ancient Terran code, lit up beneath it. Release authorized. The entire cage deactivated. Quib, watching from what little remained of the control center, choked. Oh stars, it was never locked in. Muffin stepped into the hallway, ignoring the inert security bots, the flickering lights, the collapsing magnetic shielding. Its body shimmered now, less fluff, more muscle. Still small, still quiet, but impossible to ignore. Where it walked, systems stabilized. Gravity returned. Power followed. It was a counter-entity. And it was heading toward the null form. The corridors of the zoo, once designed for controlled visitation, now became a battlefield. The null form moved through the walls as if they weren't there, phasing between dimensions, unraveling the metal into ash. 2 mech-suited guards tried to intercept. They screamed once. Then stopped. Even their suits melted. But Muffin kept walking. It met the null form in the central chamber, once used for feeding the mammoth grazers of Sector 7. The room was quiet now. The dome above cracked. Light filtered through dark clouds. Muffin stopped 20 feet from the invader. The null form twisted. Not turning, twisting. A shape that warped the air. Its face tilted slightly, as if considering the small creature before it. Then it moved. No flash. No attack. Just presence. Everything between it and Muffin aged. Tiles shattered. Lights dimmed. The air shimmered with entropy. But Muffin didn't move. It just watched. Then it barked. Once. Short. Sharp. Full of meaning. Quib saw it from the emergency feed that miraculously stayed live. He couldn't explain what happened next. Muffin jumped. But not toward the null form. Through it. Its body bent space. For a split second, Quib swore he saw a different shape, something old, armored, plated with chrome and bone, moving like a guided missile of genetic fury. Then reality snapped. The null form flinched. It retracted, its limbs folding in confusion. Muffin reappeared behind it unharmed. It had marked the target. What followed was not a fight. It was rejection. Every time the null form tried to reach Muffin, the Omega Cub bent the universe around it. Tunneling through microloops of phase-shifted time. Each attack missed. And then Muffin bit. Just once. To Quib, it looked like a tiny snap. But the null form recoiled as if struck by a solar flare. Its edges warped. A pulse screamed outward, one that made the air cry. But Muffin stood firm. And barked again. The bark hit like a data spike. Every frequency. Every spectrum. The null form shuddered. And began to shrink. Not physically. Existentially. Piece by piece, the entity folded in on itself, imploding under logic it couldn't comprehend. Beneath the growl of the Omega cub. Beneath the eyes of a creature built not just to kill, but to end. Quib wept. Muffin had just unmade the unmaker. When the dust settled, the dome was gone. The room was cratered. The null form had vanished, erased from the plane of existence. And Muffin? It sat. Tail wagging slightly. Tongue out. Then, calmly, it licked its paw. 2 days after the null form vanished, the Galactic Zoo reopened to a galaxy that would never look at Earth creatures the same way again. But Muffin didn't go back in the cage. Because there was no cage strong enough now, not physically, not politically. Muffin, the Omega cub, sat on a perch beside the central command spire of the zoo, unrestrained, unguarded, and utterly at peace. There were no more attempts to sedate it. No more drones hovering over it with trackers. Just respectful silence and the occasional nervous salute from passing officers. Every species with diplomatic access to Ivrix Prime sent envoys. Some came to study. Others came to kneel. The Valkyrie hierarchs offered Muffin a golden collar inlaid with plasma stones. The Yiltran matrons performed a 1,000-drum honor rhythm in the courtyard below. One delegation from the fringe colonies even tried to worship Muffin. It peed on their shuttle. Quib, now wearing a security badge 3 levels above his pay grade, watched it all from the elevated observation deck. He hadn't slept since the encounter with the null form, but he couldn't stop smiling. He'd lived. And more incredibly, Muffin was still wagging its tail. A chime rang across the chamber. Incoming comm, classified military relay. Priority Omega. Quib rolled his eyes. What now? Another emperor wanting to rename their kid after Muffin? But the face that appeared on the hollow feed wasn't royal. It was human. A woman, maybe in her 40s, pale skin, short hair, sharp eyes. Her uniform was old, Terran Confederacy gray, but worn like it still meant something. Lieutenant Ava Miles, she said. Former handler, Project Haven. I'm requesting immediate visual confirmation of Subject 9310B. Quib hesitated. You're the one who sent the original warning. Affirmative. She leaned forward. Is the cub still alive? Quib angled the feed toward the observation window. Muffin looked up. And barked. Ava visibly exhaled. It remembers me. Lady, Quib said. That thing dismembered a pirate, brought down a Crothan, and unmade a null form. It doesn't forget anything. She nodded slowly. Then it's still running the protocols. That bark was acknowledgement level 2. It means it doesn't perceive you as a threat. That's good. It means, Ava said quietly, you're still alive because it wants you to be. The silence stretched. Then Quib blinked. You trained this thing? We raised it. Engineered the line. 12 genetic projects collapsed before we found the right neurological signature. The cub was the only success. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a decision maker. Terran High Command built it to survive after us. To decide what's worth saving when we're gone. Quib swallowed. And it decided a zoo was worth saving. No. Ava looked him dead in the eye. It decided you were. The feed cut. Outside, the stars over Ivrix flickered back into place, clean, clear, and intact. Quib found himself standing beside Muffin later that evening. The zoo was eerily quiet. The air smelled faintly of ozone and singed cables. Muffin yawned. You know, Quib said, hands in his coat pockets. They wanted to move you to a galactic defense archive. Said it's safer. Said you could train other units. Muffin didn't react. But I told them something. He continued. I said if you wanted to go, you'd just go. Muffin licked its paw. Scratched an ear. Then looked up at him with those impossibly large eyes. And sneezed. Quib laughed until he nearly fell over the railing. By the stars, you're still just Muffin, aren't you? The cub tilted its head. then curled into a perfect ball on the warm platform. Across the galaxy, things changed. The name, Terran, no longer summoned pity or nostalgia, but caution. The zoo upgraded its security protocols, then downgraded them again when Muffin disabled the entire system using only a tennis ball and an unmonitored maintenance duct. Muffin stayed. But not because it had to. Because it chose to. Once every lunar cycle, it patrolled the perimeter. It didn't wear armor. It didn't need a weapon. The patrol logs always recorded the same entry. Perimeter secured. Presence confirmed. Intrusion probability 0. The rest of the zoo returned to normal, more or less. Kids came back. Families laughed. Exhibits reopened. But when they passed through the central plaza, and saw the small, fuzzy creature dozing in the sun, they didn't squeal or tap the glass anymore. They nodded. And whispered, "There goes the Omega Cub. The guardian of Ivrix Prime. The one who stood against the Unmaker, and won. Not with fleets. Not with armies. But with a wag, a bark, and just enough teeth to stop the end of everything. And when the wind blew just right, you could hear it. A faint, playful sound. Somewhere between a growl and a giggle. Like the universe itself was laughing with relief. Because Muffin was still watching. Still waiting. Still adorable. And absolutely lethal.